What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Operation Ivy. And I think we've done maybe 17 or 18 reactions from this 27 track, not quite omnibus. It doesn't feature everything Operation Ivy did during their unfortunately short yet entirely legendary duration of existence. But beyond this, I think there's only a couple other EPs. So there's like 5 or 6, maybe 7 tracks in their entire catalog that aren't on this compilation. So it features most of what they did during that all too short yet entirely precious period. But yes, ultimately I've reacted to, I'd say, 3/4 of it, so we are moving toward completing this, although obviously I've done it stretched out over a few years now. In any case, we're going to listen to Caution, which, even by punk rock or ska standards, and even by the comparison of other tracks on this compilation, is quite short. I think it's like a minute and a half. And yeah, it's maybe less political or, stinging social and cultural commentary, though I think there is at least a bit of cultural commentary here. But yeah, lyrically, it's a bit more narrow and personal, meaning it relates to addiction, and not just addiction in general, but addiction to methamphetamines and the idea of being locked into that habit and breaking away from it, which is to say, there's a line here about stainless steel and painted glass, which, like a razor blade on a mirror. And then, of course, the lines that you hear most often are, caution is a word that I can understand, or I think couldn't understand. But the idea at the end is he's saying, like, caution, I didn't know what it meant before, I think I got it now, don't step in the water until you know you can swim. And there's also a line about, king for a day, whore for a week, which I think speaks to the idea that an activity like that might give you a shot. And indeed, I think there's a line, something to the effect of, it makes my heartbeat pound and a mind to match, something like that, which is to say, like, it's making his heart race and his mind is moving just as fast. But for that brief moment of exhilaration, there's a cost to be paid, and you end up being caught by it and unable to get away from it. So ultimately, the song is essentially like a treatise against becoming addicted to something chemically, and maybe most specifically against speed. But yeah, so in a way, it's a more personal song than a lot of other Operation Ivy lyrics. And yeah, I think, sonically, it's what you expect from them. It's rocking. It's maybe more on the punk rock end. It has a bit less of that skankin' ska feel. I don't think there's any horns in there, so it's more in like a straightaway punk sound. But yeah, again, it's a sort of a warning about getting addicted or hooked into that world, and saying that, over time, they learn that being careful and cautious with your health and with your lifestyle is something that is wise and maybe didn't occur to them earlier, but then is something that they think they now do understand. Don't step in the water until you know you can swim. So with all that as a setup, this is twice as long as the song itself. Let's give it a listen. This is Operation Ivy. The song is Caution, and it's included here on their compilation album, which, as I said, features most of what they did, though I do think it was originally from their one studio album, which is Energy. Yeah, I think like the first 19 tunes on here or something are from Energy. So yeah, I believe it was on their one LP. But here we go, Operation Ivy, Caution.
Rolling.
Yep, again, it's shortened to the point. I wasn't thinking of that line, walked a dog with a real short leash, turned around, saw the dog walk me, which again, if you know what the song's about, then that makes perfect sense, right? Like, oh, I thought I was in control, and then after a little time I realized, whoop, nope, this thing is controlling me. So, again, the idea of exercising caution before you find yourself in that scenario is, I think, the overriding theme here. But I do like that there's a transition, like caution is a word I can't understand, and then it changes to I couldn't understand, and then again at the end, it's like, it's a word I didn't get it then, I think I've got it now. Don't get into this unless you know you can swim. So, yeah, I think it is cleverly written, and of course, it's, a grittier topic, but one that I think is admirable for the way that it's essentially saying, like, hey, maybe this seems like you're in control, maybe it seems like, something we're trying or whatever, but you better know what comes with it. So, yeah, it's a bold song, and I think within the larger catalog of their songs and lyrics, I don't know if it's necessarily an outlier, but again, a lot of their songs are about, like, the people left behind by society and politics, and people taken advantage of, and the sort of like disposition toward violence and dominance that humankind has shown, and so on. And then you get a track like this, which is certainly on some level about a social or cultural issue, but it's much more like personal. So I find this one to be a very interesting one in their larger catalog. In any case, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.